Hey everybody, I'm Bill Calkins with Ball Tech On Demand, and we're back with another installment of In the Break Room, an entire month of short educational sessions intended to help you get prepared to grow your best crops ever to send to market next year. As I keep repeating, fall is kind of like spring training for greenhouse professionals. It's a time to get your operation tuned up for high-end production. We've selected 9 topics to cover this month, one for each Tuesday and Thursday, and hopefully you're taking some time each day to grab your phone, a tablet, your computer, and a bite to eat and find a quiet spot to hear from the Ball Tech On Demand experts. Today's topic is perennial production, and our guest expert is Chris Fifo. He's a perennial product representative focusing on the Darwin and KieftSeed brands assortment and working with young plant producers and accounts throughout North America. Chris brings extensive perennial technical and product knowledge following a 30-year career working as technical advisor and head grower at Swift Greenhouses in Iowa. This guy knows perennials. So how's it going, Chris? My perennials certainly look good this time of year.
Hey, it's going great, Bill. I absolutely love the fall. Seeing how things are changing, our perennials are getting ready to go dormant, but we're getting all those fall perennials coming into full bloom right now in their full glory. So absolutely love this time of year. And like you said, hey, this is the time to get ready for the next season. Hopefully everybody had a fabulous season this year, and it's time to prep and be ready to go for next spring and summer and fall programs as well for next year.
It's true, and early reports are really good for fall sales. So I think things seem to be going pretty well out there at the garden centers. So just a quick reminder before we get started, all the videos and webinars from this month's series will be collected and posted at growertalks.com/tech-on-demand for future viewing or to share with the rest of your team. We'll put the link in the video description. But that's enough out of me. Chris, why don't you go ahead and share your screen and take us through some perennial production best practices.
All right, well, welcome to the break room, everyone. We'd like to welcome you to the perennial segment of our Ball Tech On Demand training. And like Bill said, I'm going to focus on perennials. And perennial sales have been skyrocketing, partially just because I think the market is becoming more familiar with perennials, and the growers are getting more familiar with growing perennials as well. And so I would like to discuss 3 programs that you can use and you can implement to capitalize on this growing perennial market. Now, we got fall programs, we've got spring programs, summertime, midsummer, that's a tough sell for a lot of items. You can get some great color in middle of summer, but generally you're not going to see people out doing a lot of gardens. So we've got our 2 primary targets. And like I said, sales have been skyrocketing for both spring and fall, and especially with this exceptional year, everybody's staying at home, more people are doing that gardening. So I want to help you capitalize on those programs and make this easy for you. And especially, we're kind of targeting those annual growers. More people are wanting to grow perennials, and where are we going to start? Some people are afraid of perennials. How do I grow them? Well, I'm going to take some of that fear out of growing, and I'm going to make it easy for you to get into the spring and these fall perennial programs. Now, first thing we want to understand is what are the 4 laws of retail. If we want these to look good at market, we want these to sell through, what are our 4 laws that we're going to have to follow? Number 1, color sells. We all know that from the annual side. Number 2, number 3, and 4, that is it. We want to get these things into color. We don't want just a green perennial at retail with a nice colorful label right next to the annuals. They're not going to sell through as quickly. We want these to be no-brainer, spur of the moment purchases for these retailers. And so we're going to get those into color for you. So we're going to discuss 3 programs. First is first year flowering from seed. Next will be the first year flowering from cutting or liners. And so these could be seed items that are grown in liners, or they would be vegetative selections of perennials. And the third will be first year flowering from a mature vernalized liner. And so we'll see a commonality between these 3 here. First year flowering. We're not having to plant these in the fall, overwinter them, and then force them into flower in the springtime. And so that is really helping with the scheduling on getting these into flower. And so first year flowering, annual versus perennial. Why do we have this distinction? Many perennials these days can be grown just like annuals. And so we're trying to make it easier for those people to get into the market and pick these very simple to grow varieties that anybody can have success with. Perennials can be accurately scheduled for flowering, and they can add a new dimension to any annual program. Different textures. We look at lavenders. We could get some great scents. Lavender is huge right now. And so annuals, perennials, what I call them annuals with benefits. And so they don't have to go in the landscape and stay there for years and years. We can just plant them and use them in the landscape and as annuals, because many of these perennials these days are flowering season long, just like an annual will. And so the first component of the program here, first year flowering from seed. There is a lot of great breeding going on in seed perennials. I've seen a lot of new inputs as far as new first year flowering varieties go. This makes it very inexpensive for someone to get into the liner program or the first year flowering perennials from seed, because we're going to use 288s, 128s, maybe a larger plug, but a 288 plug is going to hit a really great price point. And so we can do high volume programs with that lower price point for box stores or for IGC markets. And for perennials from seed, we're going to grow them just like annuals. We're going to take a 288 and we're going to plant it just like we would say a petunia or a geranium plug, something like that. We're going to grow them very simply. No special feeds, no special culture on a lot of these items. And so Pan American and KieftSeed has this forcing guide on our website, or you can get this at other locations where there's a tremendous amount of information out there. And so on this spreadsheet here, we've got a list of our varieties from KieftSeed. We're going to give you our plug size. We're going to show you the weeks to finish and our temperatures here. And so we can see these are annual temperatures. Something like the Dianthus, it might say a cooler temperature. That's because it's going to help it stay shorter. But, if we do it, just throw it in with our annuals, we might need a little bit more PGR. But generally, we're going to grow these like an annual. We're going to transplant and grow it in the same type of containers. Finish under the proper daylight. This is our weeks to flower. And so you can see here, we're looking at week 19. And so this is a forcing schedule for Mother's Day. This is our numbers weeks to grow, because it's going to take a little bit longer in the springtime with those temperatures. And then one critical factor to look at here, this is going to be a difference with some perennials versus some annuals, is that we're going to need long days on some items. And so some we can just grow under natural photo period, but other ones are going to require night interruption lighting or some sort of long day lighting. And what does that mean? What is long day lighting? It's very simple to do, and really there's no way anyone can say I'm not set up for that, because I've heard that so many times. All you need is a light bulb and electricity and a simple 24-hour timer. It is that easy. You turn on this light bulb from 10 p.m. until 2 a.m. That's going to make these items feel like it's the middle of summer. And so our long day perennials, we'll be able to get those into flower for Mother's Day. It's very easy to do. Another program for lighting would be day extension. Turn on the lights at the end of the day as the sun's going down and make that day last longer. This can be done with HID, with grow lights as well, but simple light bulbs are effective. Now, a third way, and really the one that I've found to be one of the best, would be morning extension lighting. This will be turning on the lights roughly 2 a.m. Now, if you have computer controls in your greenhouse and you use a negative diff program, you can start dropping your temperatures at 2 a.m. And so those cooler temperatures, when these lights come on, that's going to help promote a shorter, more compact perennial. And so the combination of diff and long day lighting is a very effective tool for high quality perennials. And so a few of my favorites from seed. Bellis, the new Dianthus Rockin' series, absolutely amazing. And then there's multiple types of English lavenders that are suitable for this first year flowering program. But then here is my list of ones that do require that supplemental lighting, that day length extension, that night interruption lighting. We have Echinacea, we have Coreopsis, Double the Sun, Sunkiss. Some of these varieties, these are the ones that are going to naturally be flowering in the garden, say June, maybe end of June, beginning of July. And so that's natural photo periods. We can artificially supplement that and get these to flower for Mother's Day very easily. We've got all that scheduling worked out for you. And so then we go into the fall program. Now, this is where I get excited because this is the time of year right now. And look at those dianthus. You know, I go to the garden center, I see more mums than anything else. And look at this. This will stand up to a mum any day of the week. You add this with, say, some echinacea and some Rebecca as well. I think we're going to have a great program to complement our mums in the garden center. And the thing about this is, once again, we could start with 288 plugs in roughly June, and we could grow those in large containers. So our inputs are minimal as far as cost goes, but look at where we're going to get for a margin on that thing. That is going to walk out the door at retail. We grow these outdoors with minimal care, so there's really not a lot of thought and planning that needs to go into these fall programs. Like I said, Echinacea, Rebecca Goldstern, probably two most recognizable perennials out there, and they are perfect for fall. And so put those in the garden center next to a mum. I think, in my opinion, at least, a customer is going to get a much better value out of an Echinacea than they will mum, because those are going to last long past frost. And so much more value. And here, once again, is our fall forcing guide. We see there it is quick annual cycle. So once again, we're going to grow these like annuals for the fall. And once again, here is our number of weeks to finish. Look how quick that is. Coreopsis is 7 weeks to finish. Echinacea, 9 to 10 weeks to finish. And so it's very easy and a very quick program. And so you see how fast and profitable these programs can be. Now I need to point out here, we see the ones that say not recommended for fall. That is mainly because these are items that are not really going to bulk up. They don't tolerate the summertime growing conditions very well. The hot, humid days, the very long days under the full sun, not recommended on these varieties. They're just not going to perform that well. So variety selection is very important for these fall programs. The ones that do say, you know, we don't require any short day bulking, but we have a few that do require. And what does that mean? What is short day treated? Here's a few of my favorites, but we can see the Echinacea and the Rebecca Goldstern on here. These need short day treatment in the plug. And so there are a number of suppliers supplying that type of liner to growers around the country. And this is essentially bulking them up, getting the maturity on them, but keeping them short and compact with short days. And this is going to give these crops the flower power that they need for fall programs. That is how we're kind of getting away, kind of artificially inducing these to have a really nice flowering in the fall, whereas normally they would be flowering in June. And so here's some great selections. This was a program that was put together for Better Homes and Gardens. We've got Coreopsis Double the Sun, Lavender Levant's Deep Purple, and Salvatore Salvia. These were all finished on week 36 last year. Absolutely amazing program. This thing had great sell-through as well. So it is definitely something I would look at to supplement any fall annuals that you're doing. Second program that we can put together is first year flowering from cuttings or liners. And so I'm kind of focusing on the vegetative side here. And you know, being on the breeder side of things now versus the production side, it's really amazing to see and understand the intense competition amongst the breeders to continuously improve and bring you better performing perennials. And so here we can see a Phlox Kapow compared to another variety on the market right now. And just the tremendous improvements. And so who is benefiting? You guys are, because we're just continuously bringing you better improvements to industry standards too. Salvia May Night, that is what May Night looks like. Industry standard was perennial plant of the year one year. But look what we've done with the Salvia Blue Bayou, the tremendous amount of flower power on that compared to the May Night. These are no-brainers. And so you are the ones that are benefiting from all of this breeding competition. And another thing we're doing is we're taking out that requirement for cold treatment. And so once again, making it very easy to schedule. And so if we're buying in cuttings, URCs, here is one thing to be aware of is the rooting hormones. Now, generally anything here, you know, we're seeing 500 parts per million, 1,000 parts per million of IBA, a rooting hormone. Traditionally, these were applied with a powder. You take the cutting, dip it in the powder, and then stick the cutting. These days, more growers are going to use what's called a drip down spray, using a product called KIBA. They're potassium IBA salts. We're mixing them up at lower parts per million from 250 to 300 parts per million. We're sticking cuttings, but then we're spraying very heavy after the cuttings are stuck. And what this is doing, it's going down into the soil around the tip of that cutting. So still, that is our target, not the leaves. And so we need to apply enough volume of these KIBA salts to make sure we're saturating the top surface of the soil. And this is making it much easier for growers. You know, when you're sticking a whole bunch of different things or large volume of things, you can stick them all at once and then come back with that heavy spray afterwards. So it's really helping out with the labor. But we're going to see some things on here, say the armories. I see 1,500 to 200 or 2,500 parts per million. These are not going to be suitable for that drip down spray. It is not going to be a strong enough IBA application. So those are ones that we still highly recommend. You use that powdered dip for the basal dip before you stick the cuttings on those items. So something to be aware of on the different varieties, but generally these things are going to be fairly easy to root if we follow one major protocol that's going to be a little bit different than annuals, the mist requirements. Generally, perennials require much less mist than annual counterparts do. And so stick them under mist. You know, we're going to be getting our cuttings in. Sometimes they're going to be off the plant for 3 to 4 days. You know, when they're coming from the cutting farm, they're going to be a little bit dehydrated. Whether they're going to look like it or not, you know, actually be wilty is another thing. Sometimes they won't, but we're going to have to realize we're going to need a couple days for rehydration after they arrive. And so then we're looking at a little more moderate mist for those first couple days until they perk up and they get acclimated. But then we need to drastically reduce the mist. What we're trying to do is we're just trying to give them enough to keep them from being wilted too much. But we need to allow the media to dry out slightly. That is one of the biggest downfalls that I see from some growers with perennials, is that the media is getting saturated and gaining weight during that time that it is in propagation. If we can apply just the lightest mist possible and the longest interval possible in between mistings, that is where I'm seeing much better success and much less shrink in the propagation area. And we're getting faster rooting. Dry these out a little bit, force those cuttings to go out and search for water, force them to send out roots, and you're gonna have much better success and much better take. And so here's a perfect example here. Using a boom for mist, a very fine mist, send it over only as much as possible. But here we have a Achillea moonshine, just stuck, looking great right here. If we run that boom over those too many times, this is what they're gonna look like. And so amount of mist is critical under propagation. And I'll tell you, one of the best successes I have seen with propagation, and it really surprised me, because this grower had no fancy booms, no Netafim mists, no automatic systems whatsoever. And so this is how he was rooting a variety of perennials, sticking them in LA plugs. We can see a Perovskia, we can see a Salvia, and I think the other one is a Phlox. But you can see how dry the media has gotten there. And so I visited this grower last October for the first time, and he was showing me his propagation area. And this is what he showed me. I'm like, are you gonna miss those yet today? And he told me no. I was like, really? It's like, this was a little bit further than I would have gone, but I can't argue with his reasoning, because this was about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The sun was starting to go down, and he told me, as the sun goes down, my temperatures are dropping, my relative humidity is going up. And so what he does, he roots these under a plastic tent. And so he mists them by hand maybe 3 times a day. By the end of the day, you can see what they're looking like, but he covers them up with this plastic when he's done misting, keeps it tight. He said by the morning, these would be all perked up and standing up. And so that is how he was having great success getting that media dried out. Such a critical factor. No special tools here at all, just a tent. Works fantastic. And so that was propagation. So finishing these vegetative perennials. In the Darwin Perennials catalog, we have that propagation guide. We also have this finishing guide. Critical things to point out here is vernalization required. No for most items. We can see the alyssum will always require a cold treatment to get a good flowering on those. Other things it'll say beneficial but not required. But for the most part, these items do not need cold treatment, and so we can buy in an active liner, we can plant an active liner and still have great success for flowering. We can see temperatures, nothing special. We see, some places here it says 60 to 80 degrees. And so these can be grown right alongside your annuals without an issue. And then one other factor, long days, once again, required on some things if we're forcing these early in the spring for Mother's Day. Other ones say long day facultative. And so this is long days will help them flower faster, but it's not required. And so just a couple things to keep in mind when you're using this for your vegetative perennials. And how are we going to finish these? And so I would like to introduce you to the brand new revamped Darwin Perennial scheduling tool. And so I actually finished this yesterday. And so I'm very excited. It's going to be posted on our website very shortly. And this has already been called the most significant scheduling tool in perennials. This is in Excel format. And so we can see at the bottom, we have an index tab, but then we have all of our Darwin Perennials varieties. What you do is you go to the individual varieties, and this is the box that comes up. We'll go to the red box and we will type in the week we want our perennials to finish. So I have week 19 for the spring and summer, early summer, and then week 36 for fall. So Mother's Day and Labor Day, two primary targets we want to hit. I click those, I hit enter, and it's going to automatically change liner ready week, liner transplant week for me. And then from here, we also have our propagation information on these pages as well. That is not complete yet, but that is on most items as well. From here then, this will automatically populate to the index page, and this is our index page. You can see it automatically enters our weeks to finish, our transplant week, our stick week on this page. And so this can help you customize your scheduling for your vegetative perennials. Just a little note here, this is taken from data that we collect at our West Grove, Pennsylvania research facility. And so we have intense scheduling trials going on there every summer long. And that is where all the details from this program comes from. So if you're in the South, you might want to understand, well, I'm probably going to finish a little bit faster. If I'm in the North or if I'm in Canada, my weeks are going to be probably a little bit longer to finish for a lot of these items. So take that with a grain of salt, but a fantastic scheduling tool to help you get these perennials into flower when you need them. And a few of my favorites. These are so easy to grow from an actively growing liner that you're not going to be able to stop them from flowering. You're not going to have any issues getting them into flower. And in my opinion, if you have them looking like that at retail, they're not going to have a problem with sell-through either. And so my third program then is first year flowering perennials from a vernalized liner. And so this is going to be the producer or yourself overwintering these perennials in a liner or in your finished container. And so essentially all perennials are first year flowering if they've received that cold treatment. And so we don't have to worry about that at all. The larger the container or the larger the plug size, the better, the more flower power you're going to have. And they're going to be very predictable to flower, very easy to schedule, and that's going to make it a more profitable program as well. And then we're going to transplant our cold treated liner according to the weeks to bloom schedule. Now, what is a weeks to bloom schedule? Now, this comes from my former employer, Swift Greenhouses, who has put a tremendous amount of work into figuring out the scheduling on these cold treated liners when planted into finished containers and grown according to their growth recommendations, temperature recommendations, and flower and lighting recommendations. And so here's the weeks to flower, weeks to bloom schedule, and highlight a few items there. From here, again, understand that this schedule is starting with a completely dormant liner. We don't want those to start growing. We don't want them to spend weeks in the liner growing before we transplant them. Otherwise, we're going to mess up our scheduling. And so here's a perfect example of what happened to a customer a few years ago. He received a bunch of lupin liners, 50 plug liners, cold treated. They're just coming out of dormancy. And so we can see on our weeks to bloom schedule 9 to 10 weeks from a vernalized liner. There's week 1 when he received these. He was concerned that they didn't look too good. And this is what you're going to expect if you're buying in fertilized liners. They're not going to look that great. They're going to look like they have a really rough life, but these are extremely healthy. And so he was concerned and did not want to plant these, even though I recommend it. And so he let them go and wanted to make sure they're okay first. So there's week 1. Here's what they look like at week 3. No issues. They look fantastic. They're coming around, but you know, you got to understand the clock is ticking here. We're 3 weeks into a 9 or 10 week cycle now, but he has not yet planted these. Here we are at week 7. He finally planted them. Now, what do you think is going to happen here? Tick tock, the clock is going 9 to 10 weeks. That gives us 2 to 3 weeks. This thing is going to flower. Now it's barely going to get rooted out into that container. And there is what he ended up with. He's got a flower on a very small plant. And so using this Weeks to Bloom, starting with a cold treated liner, you want to plant that right away. How are we going to grow it though? We want to start off very warm. And that is what a lot of people need to understand. We want to grow these like annuals, at least initially. We don't want to take them and throw them in a cold frame. We're not going to have predictable flowering if we throw them in a cold frame. If we start these off with 68 to 70 degree soil temperature, we're going to have the best success. And so here we have a Delphinium Diamonds Blue, week 1, completely dormant, maybe just coming out of dormancy. We want to plant that up. Week 3, we're getting that active growth, nice uniform coming out of dormancy. Week 5, we're filling out now, and we can see at our schedule at the top, we can start dropping our temperatures. As these have taken off and start actively growing, we can gradually drop our temperatures to what you might consider more perennial-like temperatures. Week 7, we've got flower initiation now. And what we need to understand then on all perennials, or most perennials, I should say, is that flowering is directly related to temperature. And so the warmer temperatures we have, the faster we're going to initiate flowering and bring those into color. And so if we need to slow them down, we can cool them off, speed up the flowering, you warm them up a little bit more, but understand it's directly related. So if we don't want to run them as warm as the schedule says here, understand they're going to come into flower considerably slower. And there we are, week 9, we've got color on our Diamonds Blue Delphinium. So a really fantastic schedule, very easy to use. We can also use this for containers. You know, if we're fall planting, I always say that perennials are going to have more flower power if they are actually overwintered. They're going to be bigger, they're going to be stronger, but you can do the first year flowering very easily and have fantastic plants. But a fall planted container, I think, is always going to give you more bulk on the plant. And so you can still use this schedule for those fall planted. But once again, the critical thing is when you're ready for these to come out of dormancy, warm them up. Don't let them just sit there and gradually warm up, say in a cold frame or Quonset or something like that. There's going to be too much variability. And one of the worst situations we can get into is sitting there and starting to grow, but being cold and wet. That is a bad combination, and that's going to lead to losses. And so when it's time to force these, you need to make sure they know it's time to wake up. It is time to start growing. And we want to warm that soil up and let them know, get those roots active again and get them starting to think about flowering right away. Great programs, very easy to use. There are some of my favorites for the first year flowering from a vernalized liner. A few of them on here, the Alyssum Golden Spring, the Iberis Snow Station. These do require that cold treatment to flower. But the others, they can be first year flowering. I'll point out Aqualasia Early Bird on here. Traditionally, Aqualasia needs a full cold treatment to flower. We've got the new Early Bird series now. It just needs a cool treatment. It does not need a full vernalization. 4 weeks at 50 degrees is all those need to bulk up and be ready to flower. But still, a true overwintered liner is going to perform fantastic. Any of these can be the others can be first year flowering, but cold treated liner is going to give you more flower power than the first year flowering. And once again, I've got asterisks on there for those items that do require that long day lighting. And so those are 3 perennial pathways to success: from seed, from cutting our liner, or from a mature vernalized liner. Once again, first year flowering on perennials is a critical factor to help you schedule these for color when you need them. use your resources, use the tools we've put together for you and access those. And that can help you really have these ready to flower when you need them to, and when your customers are going to want those in the garden center. And so I want to thank you all for joining me in the break room for your session of Ball Tech on Demand. Thanks.
Excellent, excellent. I think you've shared a lot of fantastic information. Again, thank you so much for spending this time in the break room covering this topic. There are a lot of perennial growers out there, and I agree. It seems like there are more every single year. And your reminder that color sells is always important. It is so true at retail. You're right. That is the top 1 through 4 rules. Color sells. And your knowledge and experience is greatly appreciated. That scheduling tool looks awesome. Really does.
Yes,
Thanks very
very
much,
exciting.
Chris. So
Very
before
welcome,
we
Bill.
close, just a quick reminder, all these videos are going to be posted to growertalks.com/tech on demand. And also look in the video descriptions, because I'm going to include some links to these production guides and scheduling tools that Chris shared, as well as a lot of other great information. So don't forget to look in the video description for tons more in-depth information. So that's it for today. So on behalf of Chris, I'm Bill Calkins with Tech on Demand, wishing you all the best with your perennial crops. And we hope you'll join us again in the break room this month for more production topics. Take care, and thanks a lot, Chris.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.